Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 9 on the Mind and Muscle HQ podcast. This week I'm joined with, as always, Matt and Tyler, and myself, obviously. We're going to be covering, muscle building. So for the listeners that are on a journey of building muscle, whether you're a hard gainer or someone that just want to develop and build your physique, this is obviously going to be an episode to help, especially as the winter months are approaching. But before we hit that subject, Matt, what have you been up to this week? How have you been doing? Let us know.
Hey guys, so I guess this week really I had a very rare kind of holiday with the family. We went to down south on the coast from Friday to Monday. So that was probably the only holiday I've had in a little while. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Albeit though I was picking up some work because I did have a client that was competing at the weekend. So I did have to connect with them just during the weekend for a little while, but the breakaway was nice. So
you coincidentally took your family to a place where your client was competing?
Oh, no, it's not what it sounded like.
That's what it sounded like. I'm just going to take you to the Two Bros event.
Well, it's funny. I did look at the distance between the Two Bro event and where we were staying, but it was too far to go. So if it was nearer, I probably would have gone.
So you just cleared your search history just so your missus never found out you were checking.
Yeah, no. So it was via phone. I was doing the check-ins and updates and making sure they were on track. And so I never actually got to attend that show. We did have a nice breakaway and a relaxing few days. So that was good. And I am still on prep myself. So just digging deeper. I added cardio in for the first time on Monday, 20 minutes a day at the minute.
How are your lungs?
All good.
Good.
Yeah.
How's prep going? Oh, sorry, Tyler. Go on.
What was the question?
How many weeks out would you be looking at now? Where are you at?
I think it's about 12 weeks. I don't know. I'm not focused on the date. I'm just getting ready in the sense that if I'm ready for the show, I'm ready. If I'm not, I'm not. So it's more, I'm slightly different than, I don't want to hardline something like deep hardline it in the sense of set that date. I'm not drifting towards that date. I'm traveling towards that date, but it's not a hard line. If I miss it, then I miss it. I don't want to apply pressure, unnecessary pressure. So yeah, I've got a goal, and if I miss the show, then I'll just get ready for a photo shoot or something like that. So
yeah.
Sweet.
Are you feeling like you're progressing as you should be? How's it gone so far?
Yeah, all good. It's coming off, kind of as expected. Just literally, a couple of pounds a week. And I to be honest, because I've been dieting a lot of the year, I'm relatively close to stage weight anyway. I'm not far off a few kilos. So there's plenty of time to take it steadily and not be so aggressive. So that's why I'm not applying any pressure. I'm just going with the flow. It's working, so it's all good at the minute.
Yeah. I noticed when we were training down in Liverpool, your condition was pretty good there. So it's not going to take too much to get you to that condition for sure. So exciting time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's funny as well. I went for a walk yesterday, and the inflammation in my hip was fairly low, so it enabled me to go for a walk. But whilst I was walking, because I'm on prep, at the same walk that I would have done when I wasn't on prep, you have this like a purpose, this different kind of purpose and focus when you're on a prep walk. It's different. The same walk when you're not on prep, it's like you're kind of walking around looking at things. This one, it's like you're focused. You're almost
you're walking for a prep, right?
Yeah. And your brain is like, I'm doing this, and you're thinking about stage, and you're focusing on what you're going to do, and it's very determined and focused and a lot different, but the same walk. The contrast between the two, and it was a funny thing, and I thought this is what I needed. I needed this focus to be on and do this what I'm trying to achieve. So it was good.
Yeah, I get that when I'm on my prep walks. I'm like, yeah, please don't talk to me like this is the prep walk. Getting the steps in. So, but it's good to reflect and use that time, isn't it? it's funny how that changes. How does that even happen? I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what clicked for me was because I have been dieting all year, or relatively all year. I didn't have a goal. So now I've got a goal and I've assigned myself a goal. That's what's flicked the switch in my head.
Giving yourself a purpose, right?
Yeah.
You said this in Liverpool, didn't you? I think we spoke about this, that you found it hard without a purpose.
Yeah, so I've given myself a purpose and which has allowed me to focus, and then it's given me more determination it's that flick of the switch that really does change, and I liked it. I really liked it. So that's it for me anyway.
Awesome. How about you, Tyler? What have you been up to? I think Tyler's frozen. You frozen, Tyler? Or are you good?
Oh, she's gone.
Oh, Tyler's gone, people. I'll do mine, and then Tyler will be back in a minute. So I actually don't know what I've done now. So I've just been rebuilding my business. So I've just been, I probably capped over 40 hours on my business, building it, making a new platform, rebuilding my website. I've probably built the most in-depth questionnaire I've ever seen. It's like someone's being examined just by trying to work with me now. But yeah, it's pretty much me and a T is just working on my business and just going from there, really. But Tyler's back now, so we'll see what Tyler. Oh, Tyler should be back now. Bear with us, people.
I can't see her. Oh, there she is.
You ready, Tyler?
I'm back. Sorry, what happened?
I don't know. You went to talk and it cut you off, and then I just quickly did my little recap of the week.
Remind me what's been happening. My Zoom just completely restarted, and then my computer just
Oh, sweet. There you go. This is the joys of recording live, people. So yeah, Tyler, let everyone know what you've been up to.
So I have been making some big adjustments to my training, which is focusing by maximising my muscle building and bodybuilding, but also to increase my stamina and fitness levels, which there's a really fine line in terms of maximising that muscle building and recovery, and it's taken some figuring out. So it's a pretty crazy training split that I'm on at the moment, which is my bodybuilding as usual, so that's the staple, and then everything else is kind of built around that, which is including some heart rate training, some HIIT training, as well as some boxing and mobility work, and it's a pretty structured plan, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen over the next 2 years.
Awesome. So I didn't know if you cut out then, Tyler, because it sort of went buffering, and I was like, she gone again? So I didn't want to cut you up. Is there like a time frame from this, or because it's quite intense?
I'm looking about 3 months. 3 months just to increase fitness levels, peak fitness levels, but also while maximising my muscle building as well, which is difficult because them sessions need to be as intense as they've always been. So food, nutrition, recovery, rest needs to be like pinpointed, which I'm looking forward to. It's a bit of a, my challenges.
That's one thing. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say we can just use Tyler's plan to talk about for this podcast then, because it looks like you've nailed it there. 3 months muscle building.
Yeah. Well, I've been on my off season since April, since the Two Bros show. And it's been going really well. But this is a slightly new aspect which I haven't tried before. But it's because it's almost like I want to grow muscle, as much as I can and use my time wisely. But I also want to retain my fitness levels and stamina and keep my body healthy, which is why I'm implementing both.
So what protocols and what are you doing almost to enable the muscle growth? What is it that what's in this plan? What have you changed that's new for you from a muscle building perspective?
So for my muscle building is my normal training split, which for me works well with quite lower volume and low rep ranges. So I'm going between sometimes 6, sometimes 8 to 12. And that is, I'll do a pull session, which is back and biceps. I'll do a push session, which is shoulders and triceps. Rest day, then I have a legs day. Rest again, and then I do a strength exposure day, which is 5x5s. And the reason that I need this personally is because my upper body strength is absolutely shit compared to my legs. So the only way that in my head, and I kind of listen to my body, like it sounds crazy, but it's almost like my body is asking for this. Like I need to build my strength in my upper body. So I'm doing 1 day of strength exposure, which is basically like what powerlifters do. But I've actually had that since the start of my prep, and the way that my body's responded to that type of training is really, really good. This has been my best off season so far in terms of strength. And you know, when your strength's going up, that you build a muscle. You should be if your calories in the right place, but it's going in the right places. It's my last off season last year, even though I kept weight under control, I was on loads of calories, I just didn't add as much as what I would have liked to. Now, there is a lot of variables in there, but what I do know is this time it is working better. And what I've added into it recently with terms of the extra split with cardio and stamina training, I've only started that this week, so I don't really know what's going to happen in the next coming weeks, coming months, because when you build a muscle, you obviously want that surplus in calories to be there. But what I'm actually doing is having more expenditure through the extra cardio, the extra HIIT training. I need to make sure that I'm getting enough recovery with my joints, with stress levels, with my CNS system. But the way that I've programmed it, I do think it's going to work, because I've got 1 day which is a heart rate train and variability run, which is quite a low intensity, so that's a low impact on joints, but that really helps towards stamina for building endurance and long distance to keep going, which is something that I need. Another day is HIIT training, which is a mix of like shuttle runs, weighted lifts, some explosive movements, some like burpees, them kind of movements, functional kind of movements. So that would be my other cardio day. The next day I would have, I've got swimming, which again, low impact, great for endurance, heart rate training and stamina.
Well, the best form of cardio is swimming, to be fair.
It is, isn't it? It is. You can see how this is quite a complicated plan, but I've had to really take some time in building it around my routine and what I think my body can handle. And then I've got a mobility day, full rest day, just with mobility, just to make sure that my body's still in check. So basically my MOT day. And then I've got a day where I've put in some Muay Thai boxing, and that's because I can't seem to find any kind of fitness that gives you that kind of stamina. Like you'll see the fighters, they can go, like their stamina is unreal, and I find that for me and my body complements actually my bodybuilding really good as well.
The one thing that on that though, there's two things, some key things there you said too, is if you think about this, right, aerobic capacity, I get terrorized on my mentorship calls every Friday because I'm that meathead in the group that hates cardio. Everyone else, like, there's CrossFitters and that all in this group, right? But there's one thing that a lot of people neglect, and that's the aerobic capacity to actually help you develop tissue. So your aerobic capacity is your endurance. It is how well you deliver nutrients. It is how well your body moves, how well it recovers. So if you're someone that's doing like a muscle round set, of say you're doing 6 sets of 4 with 20 seconds rest, that 20 seconds, your aerobic capacity is going to decide how well you clear lactic acid. And if you don't, you're going to hate that freaking set. Like stuff like that, right? But you're already nailing the aerobic capacity side of it from like just a heart rate perspective, right? But this is one of the analogies I use, and I learned this in Ireland years ago, and I quite like this analogy. It's very basic, but it works. So you say about strength and muscle building. So it's called cars in car parks. So imagine you're trying to build a car park. When you get stronger, you add spaces. when you grow muscle tissue, you add cars. So if you do nothing but work on developing tissue, which this is kind of outdated a little bit, because I do believe, I'm sure Matt will agree with me as well, that if you're pushing muscle tissue, you'll naturally get stronger if you're doing it correctly and you're not just attacking joints, basically. So you mentioned powerlifting movements, right? You see these like movements that they do not care what muscle they use, they care about from A to B moving, right? So if you're developing muscle tissue properly and attacking the tissue properly, you usually will get stronger as doing it. But let's just say in this scenario, you're not getting stronger, but you're building muscle in a hypertrophy state. You're just filling up cars, but you're not adding more spaces. So it's almost, you're not creating that tendon strength to allow more muscle tissue to be recruited. So if you are on a journey to build tissue, which obviously this whole podcast is about, you kind of always want to look at it like that. You're going to make space for that muscle to grow onto, because the body won't develop tissue if there's not enough of a support frame to hold that tissue. That makes sense. So if you think of it as a car in a car park, if you keep focusing on putting cars in, you're going to run out of spaces very quickly. Or if you do both, you're going to create a space, fill it, create a space, fill it. Does that make sense? I learned it years ago. It's quite a nice analogy, but this was one of those groups where they were very, you do a month of strength training and then 2 months hypertrophy kind of mindset, which I will be honest, I don't actually, like Poliquin days like that. I don't 100% agree with that in my own honesty, but I get the analogy. It does work quite well for beginners as well. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good way of putting it, actually. And I think because when I started my bodybuilding, I kind of went right into all of the movements. I never built a foundation of these key strength building, like your deadlift and things like that. Like I haven't had that kind of raw kind of strength background, which is probably a part that I've maybe missed out, and body's responding really well to it. So I feel like with that plan that I've put together, it's I've covered all grounds.
Yeah, the one thing as well is enjoyment, like you said about the Muay Thai. Like I couldn't think of anything worse. I remember how hard those sessions were. Fuchs doing that again. But you said about those powerlifting movements, right? I think me and Matt spoke about this again during our night chats in Liverpool. Funny enough, I reached out to my coach the other day and I was like, can I put a banded rack pull in? I love basically a rack pull is very much shat on in this industry, form police and people like that. However, if it's done properly, it's basically a dead stop RDL. Maybe slightly higher. If it's done properly, it is a serious movement. If it's very rarely done right, it's the only thing. But I love a good old bottom banded rack pull, because when you stand up, your glutes scream at you. But it was because, I call it meathead. So you get meathead Jamie, you got sensible Jamie. So the plan I'm using right now is working very well. It's all going great. However, there's no nuts and meat movements, like a deadlift or a block pull or a rack pull, not even a barbell RDL. Literally the heaviest movement I got is a freaking hat squat, which is great, but I do like a good old free weight movement. So, and it's that enjoyment factor, right? Whether it's optimal or not, it's an enjoyment factor to a movement that genuinely just gets you buzzing. And for me, so it's an RDL or a banded rack pull. Just to be clear, I got told no, which really hurt my soul. But I understand what you mean. When you're trying to do something, if you enjoy it, it makes you want to do it more. Like, so doing Muay Thai might not be great from a hypertrophy perspective, but it probably is great for your mental health during this journey. But the only thing I would say, you're probably going to eat a shite load more now because of that output on top of that. That's the only thing, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
Like 20 bagels a day.
Yeah.
So to
4.5 calories at the minute.
You what?
4,500 calories at the minute.
Honestly, you've just literally, I think within the third thing you said, you're doing more output than me. I was like, fuck. So yeah, Matt's looking at you like, I've only just started cardio and I'm prepping. Yeah.
So obviously the podcast is around muscle building, and let's try and add a little bit of clarity so we get some direction in what we're talking about. We went off on a tangent there with Tyler's pursuit of muscle gaining and strength and fitness as well. So in a nutshell, I think I'll just throw in some basic, what I see are the three basic nuts and bolts of growing muscle, which one is training hard enough and consistently enough over time is probably number one. Number two, alongside that has to be your food, nutritionally dense enough and calorific enough to grow muscle. And then number 3 is sleep. I would say the 3 most important. Along with that as well, which Tyler can talk about, has to be an element of mindset and strength of mind, and able to allow you to do all those. Because we were talking about this backstage, and a lot of people think they are going through the process of training, eating and resting, but under an analysis of that, you normally find that the person is either doing not one of those or all 3 of them badly. So they're not training properly enough or hard enough. They're not using the correct form or the correct exercises. They're not sleeping enough, and they're certainly probably not eating the right foods or eating enough of the right foods. And it's normally a combination of one or all 3 of those. So if you want to expand on that, Jamie, Tyler.
You can see me going like that. I was going to say, well, I'll give you 3 very common examples, because we've all been we all are PTs and either have been or are. So 3 good examples, right? So training properly, I'll start with. If you're someone that's bouncing on the calf machine when the Achilles is the most responsive tendon in the body, yeah, you're not growing your calf, you're just bouncing on it. So that's one point of execution. If you're doing lying leg curls and your hips are going up and down, you look like you're humping the pad, yeah, you're not using your hamstrings, you're literally doing a lower back exercise. If you're doing bicep curls and you're doing it with straight bar, you're just damaging your elbows. I had to get that one in there. And you're throwing your shoulders up, you're not locking your elbows in place, or you're not keeping them in a rigid place, either retracted or out in front of you in the length and range. You're working your shoulders. If you're bench pressing with a bar, 9 times out of 10 you're working your shoulders, but there are the rare exceptions. There's a lot to this, right? Execution is slowly but surely becoming more well known now, which is great. Even people like professional bodybuilders like James Holland said, Cuba, people like that are all now starting to realize it, which is epic, because it was very much shat on literally a year ago. So if you're doing all those things and you're blaming that you can't grow, you need to pull your ego back and start prioritizing execution. Next thing, if you think you're eating a surplus, and let's just assume you truly are, and you actually are tracking it properly, macronutrients, so protein has to be in a good place, but to a point where you can actually digest it. Obviously, I was going to bring that in. But if you're someone that's bloating all the time, not shitting every day, all these issues, you're not digesting your food. It's like trying to build a house without actually giving the builder any bricks. The food that you eat, it's not you are what you eat, it's you are what you eat, digest, excrete, absorb, all those things. So if you're not absorbing the food, basically, it's just going straight through you. There's another thing. Thirdly, because I'm off on one, sleep. If you say I get good sleep, but you have no idea what good sleep is, until you track it, you have no idea. Don't get it wrong, it is real. We were talking about this again off air, but blue light blocking glasses, your sleep hygiene, you watching Netflix before bed without any blue light blocking glasses on. Are you up playing games? I do, but I make sure I'm surrounded by orange light and stuff like that. Are you sleeping 4 hours a night? And one thing that's very clear here is sleep is the most anabolic natural thing on the planet, which a lot of people easily, they care about their calories and their training, but they're sleeping 4 hours a night. Sleep literally dictates, I call it a ratio dictator. So if you're in a deficit, that ratio of fat loss to weight loss, so muscle loss and stuff like that, is determined by stress and sleep. If you're in a surplus and you're in a 500 calorie surplus, where that weight gain comes from determines on your ratio of sleep and recovery. So if you're doing everything right, but you're very stressed and very poorly recovered, you're probably just going to gain a lot of water weight. You're not actually going to gain a lot of body fat. You're not going to gain lean tissue. You have to make sure that body's in a recovered state to actually develop tissue and burn fat, to be fair. It has to be equal to some extent. Obviously, it's not that black and white, but best way to explain this is if you are pushing yourself, which you have to do to grow tissue, as Matt said, the intensity, you have to make sure that if you're digging yourself a hole, you can still get out of it at chest height. If you're digging yourself such a deep freaking hole by poorly sleeping, poorly digesting your food, bouncing in your freaking calf, humping the leg curl pad, you're probably you have to get a ladder to get out, and that's not going to happen. You'll probably have to deload within 2 weeks because the amount of stress put on your body. The idea is that you want to push your body as sensible as you can, and everyone is different. Everyone is different. What Tyler just said she does, I know for a fact I would diet on a third of that. And that's just probably because I'm a lazy fucker deep down, but it also is because I just can't cope. And ladies handle lactic acid so much better than men. Ladies are machines. We are giant pansies, no matter how much we don't want to admit it. So yeah, there's my 2 pence, all those 3 points, but they're very valid points. Anything from you, Tyler?
they're really good points, especially the macros, getting your protein. You need to have that protein marker on point because that's what's growing your muscles. plus your carbs and your fats. I would say anything to add to that would be the training intensity, which, just going on from what both of you have said on, are you training hard enough? You really do want to be going to the gym and, dominating that gym session, know what you're going to train, have known how many reps you want to hit, what you wanted to achieve in each session, and making sure that you're progressing over time. You want to be getting stronger, as I mentioned earlier on, not keeping it the same weight, maybe 20 kg dumbbells for, months on end. You're not going to end up growing muscles keeping them weights. You want to be increasing the weights or getting an extra rep here and there and making sure that you're progressing a little way somehow. And that's a really good marker of making sure that you're getting stronger, which means you're adding some lean muscle on. And sleep is, as Jamie was saying, so important when you're putting that time in the gym. Make sure that you're resting, you're recovering and getting the sleep, because that's when you're actually growing. That full time out of the gym is when you're refueling, you're recovering your muscles, you're repairing the muscles with the food. And then your sleep is when your hormones are actually the growth hormones at the highest point during sleep. So make sure you're getting between 7 to 8 hours at a minimum, I would say. That 7 to 8 hours seems to be a sweet spot for most people. I seem to head more towards the 8 at the minute, depending on schedule. But yeah, sleep, stress as well, keep stress levels as low as possible. That'll help with digestion. Jamie, won't it? Keep them stress levels low.
I'm holding on. Henry ran. I literally covered digestion in like 10 seconds. I'm so proud of myself. But yes, you're absolutely right. Stress is probably the biggest factor for digestive issues, that a lot of people go, oh, I've bloated, and yet they rush their food and didn't even sit down and look at it and ate it. So yeah, absolutely. If you're not even gone.
I was just going to say, well, so we're talking at a really kind of a basic level here. We're
trying to, yeah.
We are. We're talking on a nuts and bolts, like really, really granular level. But it always amazes me that, even now to this day, the people who call themselves experienced lifters and bodybuilders, and they're still doing all these things wrong.
Do you know how many people come to me and have 300 grams of protein a day, and they're like 30% body fat, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's for the listener that's not aware of what that means, you're massively eating more than you should be. Protein is quite hard to digest in excessive amounts. And people still go by this bodybuilding knowledge of like 1 gram per pound. And if you're 30% body fat and you're being true of yourself, a lot of people think they're 10% when then they're on to 30. There's a lot of fat you're using for your protein calculation when it's not. But it's quite a common thing you find, right, mate?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the basics. So if we talk about training, first of all, Tyler mentioned around progressing your weight, trying to get stronger each week, and there's little tips and tricks in order to do that. And log booking is, writing it down on a piece of paper is probably the most the simplest and cheapest. But there are apps out there now which record and calculate volume, accumulation and progression, which are really cool. I would never write on a logbook myself anymore on a piece of paper. I use an app because it visually tracks my progression via graphs and things like that. So it's very easy for me to visually look and see how I'm progressing and what kind of volumes are hit previously, and where I need to go to onto the next time I do those. So if you're not tracking if you're not recording your workouts, and if you're not tracking them and progressing, you're not building muscle.
You're just guessing.
Yeah, and if any listener out there is going into the gym and counting numbers 1 to 15 or 1 to 10 each week, and kind of picking up a dumbbell or putting the pin in the stack, they are not doing this in a structured way. They may come across muscle building accidentally. So what Tyler said, I think, was you've got to train hard enough. Well, you can go into the gym and absolutely smash yourself and feel like you've trained hard. But that does not mean that you're hitting progress on a week by week consistent manner. If you go in every single day and smash it, think you're going in every single day and smashing it, you're still not progressing. And the body, in order to make muscle, requires novel stimulus each time that you go in. So if you started on week 1 at a certain volume or certain intensity, you need to progress that into the next week. There has to be a progression. If you literally go in and annihilate yourself on day 1, where do you progress from that? You have to annihilate yourself +1. How do you record that increase in annihilation, almost self-annihilation? How do you record that? It doesn't work. And what you tend to find with that method is it's really enjoyable to those hardcore bodybuilders going in and just giving it everything. And you know, the reason why I'm talking about this is because I've done it myself for over 10 years. Went in and absolutely trashed myself on gave it 110% on every single workout. I didn't grow hardly any over those 10 years. I mean, I did, but not the amount to which I've grown in the last 18 months or 2 years, by pulling everything back, doing everything properly.
Digging yourself a hole that you can get out of, basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you know, you'll get the people that are just going, I absolutely kill it every single session. Well, take that passion and desire and put that into a focused progression plan, and step back and think about the exercises that you're executing on a day-by-day basis and add progression into that. And progression just means either, so if you nail your form from day 1 and the form never ever changes from day 1, then you don't ever need to pull that form back. That in reality, that nobody can keep the form 100%, or very, very few can do it, myself included. I have to reassess my form every so often, video it, reassess it, and think, hang on,
we all have children in our heads that get carried away and the ego takes over.
Of course. So there is always a self-assessment required of the form, but from day 1, you should always execute it correctly. Then really you should implement some small progression steps, like next week, add on an extra rep or 2 rep. And that's all it takes is to grow this progression. And then once you're getting outside of your ranges that you wanted to hit, so if you've selected an 8 to 10 or a 12 to 15, 10 to 15, whatever the rep range you've selected, if you're starting to get over that 15, then potentially it's time to up a weight. And you know, if you use a micro increase, like 0.5 of a kilo, 1 kilo, 1.25, rather than the machine weights, if you're using free weights, then just micro load them. That's another good way of progressively overloading. Or the other one is to stay at the same weight but add on an extra set. So you add in volume by sticking to the same weight.
More time under tension.
Exactly. And then reassess your form every single time you go in there. Make sure that you're controlling the eccentric and concentric movements. So both back and forth, or whatever terminology you want to use, negative and positive movements. Don't allow the weight to drop under gravity, or don't allow the cable to pull your arm back. Control it on, when you're contracting the muscle and when you're relaxing or lengthening the muscle. And there is a very basic progression model. And I guarantee you that I would say, unless you're at the top level, most of you guys are not adding in a progression. You're not adding a progression model, which means that you're not growing muscle in the most efficient way possible. And what you're doing is you're accidentally growing muscle when you're creating an accidental additional stimulus. So that's the best advice I can give on training.
Well, I think what would help. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you an example of how I would approach a set mentally, right? Let's just say I was going for a hack squat. So I don't use the apps that Matt uses. I'm very much old school for someone that loves new shit. It's really weird. So I have notes on my phone and I log it as a notepad on my phone. So it's a logbook on my phone. And how I've done that for years and years and years. So let's just say I've got a hack squat and I've got a rep range of 8 to 12. The reason there's 4 reps there is I genuinely believe if you have 2 reps, this isn't for every movement, for most. If you have 2 reps, that is not a long enough time under tension to be able to recover. So I'm saying if you had 8 to 10, so let's say 8 to 10 or 10 to 12, whatever I said, so say 8 to 10, yeah? if you smash that first set and you died at 10 reps, personally, for my recovery markers and what I see a lot, even if you rested 2 minutes, 3 minutes at that nervous stimulus for that rep range, you probably would barely manage 7 or 6, like depending on the intensity of what you've done. It all depends on your aerobic capacity too, as we just discussed. So 8. So I would always have a 4 rep range for that reason. So we have a broader spectrum to hit. But say on that first set, I looked at my last week, and let's just keep it simple. I did 100 kilos and I hit 10 reps on my first set. Why am I then going to, the next time round, do 100 kilos again when I've already hit the max threshold? So I'll do 112. If I feel really cocky, I'll do 115. Do you see the increases there of 2.5 and 2.5 again? So then I did that. And then it's almost like you're challenging yourself. And bodybuilding, building a physique, whatever you bloody want to call it, it's all the same thing. It's so mental that it's you versus you every time you step in the gym. So if you're not logging your lifts, you're guessing. But if you say, right, Jamie, Jamie last week did 100 kilos for 10. I've got to do at least 112 now for at least 8 to see progression, because I pushed the weight up and I've done a heavier load. I then do that movement, and then you judge it like that for the next set, the following set. And I do personally believe that you should see progress in at least 70% of your movements every session. If you're not, there is an issue with your lifestyle, i.e. stress and sleep, your nutrition, you're under recovering, or you need to deload and you're plateauing, or you've been doing the same program for too long, which I will be honest is actually very rarely the case. I can do the same program for a year and see progress every week. It's very unlikely that it's actually the length of the program, in all honesty. It's usually the fact that your nervous system's taking too much of a hit and you need to back off for a bit. But let's just say a lot of people deload because they've either pushed the pedal too hard or because every other bodybuilder does it, so they think they need to deload. But yeah, so that's how I personally attach a set. And if you're logging it, always put down and be honest with yourself. So say you had 10 and you did 8 reps, but then you paused, did another one, paused, did another one, like a deep breath. I would put 8/1/1. I wouldn't do 10 because that would tell me next week that I'd done 10 straight with no issues. Does that make sense? So I like to do that. So I always tell my clients to slash it. So say you're doing a lying leg curl, like I just said, if you start humping the pad and look like you're having fun with your wife on the pad, you would actually get off, take a breath, go again. But if I actually have to come away from the machine, which I very rarely do, to be honest, I would actually do a space. That's how anal I am with this. So I'll do 8 space 1, then say the next form was a bit of a bounce, I'll do /1. Or if it's a partial, I'll do 1 partial. Do you see what I mean? So the more detailed you can be with some sort of logging, the more you're helping yourself next week to progress. Because you could do the same weight and smash 10 straight, but that's actually progress because you didn't have to lose your form. You didn't have to pause or anything like that. So progress is way more than just adding load, basically. It could just simply be better control. And
that's actually so important, because it can be hard, but you do have to leave like your ego at the door, haven't you? It's not, you know, you can't walk around the gym and think, oh shit, like he or she's lifting this amount, I need to kind of look better and stronger than that. You really need to leave that shit at home and outside of the gym and just focus on the weight and what feels right and difficult enough to hit them rep ranges that's right for you. Because if you're lifting a weight that's too heavy, you can't get the full movement, the full range of movement. And that's the optimal thing that we want to achieve, the right tempo, the right range of movement, and just hitting the rep ranges. So it's really important just to not go and get the heaviest weights to build muscle. What you need to be doing is making sure that your form and your tempo is on point as well, which goes in very nicely with when you're putting a program together.
I'm not being funny, right? This is a really weird analogy, but it's very rare your ego actually helps you. And I learned this from a mentor once. So relationships, social events, yourself, if you have an ego in any way, it is going to hold you back. Like, so you go to a gym and you're like, I need to curl a 20 kg dumbbell because the bodybuilder's been training for 10 years versus me training for 2 months is doing it. Doesn't that sound silly on paper? Then you go and try and do the same weight. That's your ego. That's only going to hurt you. And like, if there's ever an ego involved, don't get it wrong. There's times when everyone has an ego. I'm not saying they don't. Like I said, I wanted to do a rat pull just because I wanted to do a rat pull. So that's an egotistical thing. I just find the movement freaking sexy. Don't know why, just do. But that is an egotistical movement. Once my coach said no, that's it. It's no. It's just, you see what I mean? It's I call it the meathead. I always have. But so if you're letting your ego control your progress, I will be honest with you, that's probably a massive insecurity. Because if it means that much to you, that you have to overload something for Instagram or for the person training with you, whatever, or the girl across the gym you want to impress, or the guy or whoever, that is your ego getting in the way. And that's not what the gym's for. And I will be honest with you, if you're worried about someone around the gym judging you for what you're doing, it's probably more a reflection of yourself, or that person's a complete prick. One or the other. Because I'm telling you now, if I was in the gym and I saw someone hat squatting with their feet at the bottom of the freaking platform, not with their toes over the edge, that really winds me up. If someone's doing that, I would like they had no weight on it, but they were doing it bang on. I would rate them so much more. I don't care the weight they're doing. Like even if they were screaming their nuts off, I really wouldn't care, because they're putting that work in. They're letting the ego, they're leaving the ego at the door. A lot of people say it, they never truly do it. And I think it's such an important thing. Like I remember I was made to put heels elevation on a hat squat. For anyone that hat squats properly, you already know how deep that is. Now elevate it. It's like, I think I did 20 kilos the first time, where my normal hat squat was 160. That was a kick in the nuts. I had the right hump, but then it's humbling. And you have to remember that it's an extreme movement for a reason, right? Like, for example, you see these bodybuilders doing sissy squats body weight, but then they like to load the hat squat at 200 kilo and put their feet really high up on the platform. And I was like, it's weird how one movement's okay not to be egotistical, but the other one is, because it's a bigger movement. Do you know what I mean? I think, honestly, if people let their egos go and stopped worrying about everyone else around them and trying to impress people, watch your results. And I'm talking execution, intensity, and purpose. Your results will come flying. I genuinely believe that.
Have less injuries.
Hey?
And you'll have less injuries as well.
I haven't been injured. I've been injured more sitting at my desk working at my laptop and like twinging my neck than I have in the gym. Not even joking you, like genuinely. I've been injured from food intolerances and swelling more than I have training in the gym. I've popped my shoulder from gluten, for crying out loud. So yeah, that sounds extreme, people, but there is actually a funny story there. So don't judge me. But yeah, so that's what I mean. If you train as hard as you can recover, and just leave your ego at the door, I'm telling you now, your training's pretty much sorted. And put it this way, I have an education portal for my clients. The first 2 big videos I did was, what did I call it? The importance of execution. You can't fire a cannon from a canoe, with loads of examples. And then training intensity and logging your lifts. If you understand those 3 sections, you will be able to train properly, and you will learn as you do it, and you'll learn more and more as you go. Then obviously you've then got the 80% at home you've got to worry about, like stress, sleep, and food. So yeah, it's a massive picture that people seem to go, right, I'm bulking, and then they go eat loads of shit and train like an idiot, and then they wonder why they need elbow sleeves every time they train, and knee sleeves.
Yeah, I mean, well, exercise execution is a good, like Tyler said, a good injury prevention tool, which means that if you want to take, muscle growth, bodybuilding, physique changing, whatever you want to call it, seriously, and do it for a long period of time, then you need to adopt exercise execution or proper execution from day one. And so, chucking around weight is really enjoyable. And don't get me wrong, some of the best times I've had and most memorable with friends, where we're really like lifting as heavy as we can. But they're just fun sessions. They're not really doing the job. They're not doing what we need. If you apply execution properly, then you will grow more muscle in a quicker time frame than really just going in and annihilating yourself. Proper execution combined with constant tension, is the key. If you think about it, your muscles don't recognize the weight on the bar, but they recognize the tension that the weight creates.
The body's an adaptive mechanism, right? You're forcing it to adapt.
Yeah, and maintaining a constant tension throughout the full range of motion of any exercise is so important. If you're trying to get every bit of stimulus to the muscle. So then that's what I was saying before. A lot of people forget, say a bicep curl is a really good example of where, you'll see them and they'll really squeeze and contract the muscle, but then let it drop down. They're not controlling that weight in both parts of the range of motion. They're not controlling it as it comes down. And it's actually proven that most muscle micro damage occurs on the eccentric movement when the weight is coming down. So that's why, combined with full range of movement, it's important when you're trying to achieve the best stimulus possible, and that's what we're trying to do. Muscle stimulus over time is the way that we grow muscle, and that's exactly how you do it. So
not even that, like you just said there, a perfect example of a bicep, right? So if I use the lateral raise as the most common one, but people always see the squeezing aspects, like you said, the eccentric loading. They see the squeezing aspects of the concentric phase as, oh, I'm getting a pump, I'm building tissue. There's so much more to it. There's so much more. So if you think of a lateral raise, it's only hard at the top of a dumbbell, right? Now, I'm sure anyone that's a regular gym guy has now seen everyone with cuffs doing lying lateral raises. There's a reason for that, because you now load it in the length and range. Now, all my clients know this. When I get them doing movements, some movements I would load if their machines aren't adequate in certain ways in the length and range, because that's a range that gets ignored a lot. Like Matt just said, if you squeeze in a bicep curl and you get to the top, because everyone understands bicep curl, you've just squeezed the top. Yeah. Now, if you just drop it on the way down, that entire length and range you just completely ignored. There's a good 2/3 of the range of the bicep you just ignored. And obviously we can go very advanced with this, but I'll keep it very basic. So you just ignored 2/3 or 1/3 squeeze at the top. Now, if you were to isolate that, like using let's say a machine curl, and you really kept this control, you didn't do the 21 bullshit you see so many people still do. You just do a full contraction. You do a full lengthen. So I'm talking extend the arm and almost think about popping the elbow to lengthen the bicep and then curl again. That alone, so if you did 5 reps like that, I guarantee you get a harder contraction. You have to halve the load of what you would normally do the other way, because you're actually doing it correctly. There's nothing more frustrating than hearing someone say, oh, I won't do it like that because it's harder and I'll have to lighten it. And I'm like, do you have any idea how pathetic that actually sounds? Without sounding like an arsehole, but that's an ego thing again. Like you see people all the time, like they're squatting and it's all over the place. I'm not a fan of squatting as in free weight. If I say to them, oh, do you want to elevate your heels? No, I tried that and I had to drop it by like 50 kilos. Like, well, the body's, it probably would be more than that, to be honest. But I'd say to them, well, the body's trying to tell you something there, that you're not actually built to squat and you need to elevate your heels. Like, do you see what I mean? And there's such a, again, it's an egotistical thing, right? If you're someone doing partials not intelligently, because partials do work, like a lying lateral raise with a cuff, absolutely partial the fuck out of it, because you never work at length and range anyway. But it's understanding this. And if you seriously want to take muscle building seriously, study the anatomy and understand it. It takes a very long time. I'm not going to lie to you, hence why you hire coaches, but it is worth it. It will make all the difference. And all the stuff that was geeky 2 years ago, all the bodybuilders that are serious are now using for a reason, because it really does matter. And fibers, fiber linings, how they respond, all these things really matter. But I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, because we want to keep it quite basic for the listener, but just educate yourself basically.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing which we haven't mentioned, you kind of touching on it slightly there, but besides obviously setting up your intensity, sets, reps, rest times, another crucial factor is the exercise choice, and that's where you were you were kind of talking about there, about you wouldn't select a squat as the best exercise. So exercise choice, it is a crucial factor. You know, so, and I think this is when you go to gyms now, this is what I find about a gym is gym is a commercial unit. It's designed to help, you know, the masses, a whole raft of people, from young teenagers to elderly, to big people to little people. It's trying to suit everybody. And, you know, if you select machines, that machine might not necessarily be set up for your movement patterns or your skeletal, you know, movement or shape or size. And, you know, you might see a person get on it and it might work for them. You get on it and you're doing exactly the same movement, you know, whether that's a side lateral raise, a chest press, a pull, or whatever that is. But that might not work for your body. And also, a lot of these pieces of equipment are designed to be used by anybody. And so sometimes they're actually a big pile of poo-poo. You know, don't
sugarcoat it, they're shit.
Absolutely garbage. A lot of equipment in the gym is commercial, and it's basically designed as an average
I really want to say a brand, but I don't know if we're allowed to, because if anyone ever shows me a commercial gym,
well, to be honest, I mean,
so close.
The number one rule is if a machine does more than one thing.
Yeah.
So if it does if it
A
does
leg curl and a leg extension,
if it does a lion leg curl and a seated leg extension, then it's turd. It's a space saver machine that can do both functions, but ideally it's not set up for either.
Or a hat squat and a leg press. You see those?
Oh, I have seen those. What the hell?
I can't even get my foot on it in the right place.
Yeah. So anything that's got a dual purpose is general, or multi-purpose is generally a no-go for me.
Or if they try and be clever and they have TEC in the first name as a very popular brand in the commercial gyms, they are the most frustrating things I see when someone says that's the gym equipment they've got. In other words, if they use a seated leg curl that has a round pad in front of your knee and not down on your quad, please stop using it unless you have loads of seatbelts spare to tie yourself down. A lot of gyms just try and be different.
Even all the best makes do make shit kit. So, you know, even Cybex, Nautilus, they do make bad pieces of kit. On the other hand, they also make the best. And it is a commercially driven industry, so they have to provide kit to make money. And so if you're on a yacht, or not a yacht, and what's it called, a cruise boat, and having to, you know, with a space saver machine, well, Nautilus and Cybex want to provide kit for that as well. So, but would I use it? Well, I would on the cruise ship, but not for my own training at home, and definitely not. So definitely selecting the right machines, you know, and I find that most gyms, they do have to cater for the majority, and they're not catering specifically for a person trying to grow the biggest amount of muscle. So it is designed for someone just to get on it and lift it, and that's not necessarily lifting it in or pushing it or pulling it in the right way. It's moving it kind of in the right direction, but is it connecting with the muscles in the most efficient way? I would say that 75% of kit in gyms does not work effectively for that user.
They even load it in the wrong way. Like, how many leg extensions do you see that get heavier when you kick it out, and that's when you're weaker? Like, winds me up.
The load is all wrong. But things like a lot of back machines are all wrong. They're just completely wrong. They're pulling your elbows away from your body and things like that. So the design engineering is bad on a lot of machines.
And even plate loaded stuff, people. A lot of people see plate loaded stuff as gold. There are loads of plate loaded kit out there. Like, for example, we just spoke about back. So if you do a pull down, it should get lighter as your elbow travels towards your hip and not behind you if you don't pull down. So as you draw down, it should get lighter, because that's when we'll get a lot weaker. It should drop off. Now, I'm telling you now, there is countless brands that are quite famous and are technically the best brands that do not do that. They get heavier, they get lighter as we get stronger, and they get heavier as we get weaker, which does not make sense. This is why you start getting a bit fancy with the banding and the placements and stuff like that. But again, this is quite far, but it is also important at the same time.
Guys, we've forgot a key element. Well, we haven't forgot. We've been concentrating on two very important ones. So we've got our progression, intensity, exercise choice. Another aspect, we've got frequency. That's another important.
It comes under training as hard as you recover as well. Like, I will be honest with you, most people that work a 9 to 5 and have a life, they have kids and stuff like that, should not train more than 4 times a week. I genuinely believe that.
You've got how much, but some people can actually grow too much as well. I've seen, you know, people thinking that to grow muscle, you need to maybe train it, you know, 6-7 times a week on each training session, and it's not the case. You're forgetting about.
Oh, you mean total volume per muscle group? Oh, sorry, I thought you meant frequency of sessions. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it needs to be programmed so that you're hitting it at least, you know, once a week, if not maybe twice, or even up to 3 times.
3 times in my opinion, 3 times lagging, twice in general, depending on the individual. If you're training 3 times, then do all body, prioritize the muscle groups.
Program specific, isn't it?
So just to obviously plug myself in this, I have actually written a PDF all about this specific topic, and it's free for any listeners to download, and everything that we've talked about so far has been covered by the document. And you can go onto my Instagram page, click the link tree at a bio, and in there at the very top of the bio is a free giveaway for muscle building, and it does talk about all this. So Tyler, I've just pulled it up now because I thought, oh, hang on, let me have a look. And you know, it even guides you around if you want to do, a goal was to increase strength, what kind of intensity, rep range and rest you should be looking at. If your goal is increase muscle mass, it tells you the intensity, rep ranges and rest times on there. So from a muscle growth perspective, the rep range is what you're talking about there, is around between 6 to 15 reps as a guide. It's even got things on there around frequency. So, you know, we're telling the listeners all about this. If they want to follow up with a little bit more detail, just download the free PDF, and it has got all the information on there.
In other words, Matt isn't stingy, because all that stuff I've got, you have to become a member to do it. Matt's like, I'll give it to you. I'm like, no, you must be a part of my group.
It still doesn't go into it. What it's doing is covering what we're covering, but in a fact,
it helps, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had this conversation with someone on Instagram today, because we were talking about digestive health and calories and stuff, right? And basically, in a nutshell, he made a joke saying like, oh, so like people only help if you pay them. And this is the one thing about this industry where we are all business. We are all businesses. Let's not lie. We are. However, I'm telling the reason us three get on so well is because we actually give a shit as well. But I've had people message going, your content, and obviously people I've never even met or spoke to, and they message you randomly going, I followed your advice, I did X, Y, Z, and I'm now 5 kilos lighter than I ever have been in my life. Do you have any idea how much that means to us?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And this is why, like when you, because I've had it before, people are like, oh yeah, it's free, but is it free? I'm like, no, yes, it's free. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
There's no strings attached.
Exactly, yeah. You literally
the only thing on if it goes to my website, and it asks you to put your name, address, and email account, but you don't have to. You can exit and not have to if you don't want to. But apart from that, that is the only string.
There are good humans, basically.
Tyler, there's actually a picture of you in the PDF. Yeah. I've used a picture of you, and there's a section right towards the end, which we haven't touched on properly yet. So the final topic of training is around recovery. And make sure that if you're training hard, that you're recovering well enough. And there's a picture of you there just above that. So you need to download the PDF and see the picture. So
yeah, enter your email address, Tyler. Stop it.
What picture we've got here?
Tyler in an ice bath, recovering.
Yeah, still needs to be organised, doesn't it?
Oh, mate, I asked one of my mentors about ice baths, and they were like, you have to do so, because I was like, can I just do the whole turn the shower on, stand under it until it gets warm, because I live in a poor place. And they were like, no, it has to be at least for a minute, and you have to go until you're shivering. And I'm like, but apparently it's actually it's not bad, but it's less optimal, keyword there, to then put it hot. You should get out the shower freezing and stay freezing until you warm up naturally, because it's your body adapting.
Watch your body, it all goes red, and it almost feels like your body is just being flushed out of shit, and your blood's all refreshed, and it just feels really good.
Because when the cold water hits me, I talk to myself and distract myself, and I hold my hand on the handle, so I accidentally hit it off.
You scream like a baby. That's what you do.
My neighbours are like, "What the fuck was that?" Like my 4-year-old's kicking off, like, "That's me." I gave it a go the other day. I fucking hate it, but I do. The thing is, I have saunas every night, so I go the other end. So yeah, it changes, but yeah, I do need to do it. It is.
We've gone off track anyway, so
yeah,
pulling you back in. We've talked. I think we've nailed the training bit at a high level. We talked about sleep. One of the things that we didn't touch on sleep was just to kind of delve slightly deeper into that, because we could talk about sleep all night, but Jamie mentioned a device called an Aura Ring, but there are other ones that you can use. Maybe not quite as accurate as the Aura Ring, but in order to understand the amount of duration, and more importantly, the quality of sleep and the stages of sleep. So the stages there is the thing that I'm going to be talking about slightly. Well, Jamie's probably going to talk about more than me. But
I've been talking about
it's the sleep stages which are important. So, the main ones, light, REM, and deep sleep, and we have to go through those. You do have elements of awake as well throughout the sleep period, but the main stages are those, and it's important to be in all of those stages for different reasons. So, Jamie, do you want to talk about specifically? Is this something that you can do, REM and deep sleep, and what the advantages are of understanding? Because most people will look at the watch and go, "We have had 7 hours sleep. That's great."
Yeah.
But actually, that's not what's important, because you might have had, really light 7 hours sleep, and it was absolutely shit. It gave you no kind of recovery whatsoever. Or you might have had no deep sleep and really high REM. What's your understanding around the stages of sleep then, and what's the importance of that?
Well, realistically, so people look at it like, 7 to 8 hours, I didn't wake, I'm good. But like that said, you can look at your aura-ing, for example, like we do, and you're like, oh, it was all light. Like, well, that doesn't actually mean you're asleep. You can be asleep and not be asleep. That's one thing people need to wake up and realize. So you can have your eyes closed and yet your body's still running, like, if that makes sense. It should shut down. So to get to these points, though, things like not eating before bed, give it a good 3-hour window for your stomach to empty. Ideally, no electronics, but let's be honest, I still do. I play FIFA at night. I don't care. Fortnite as well is life.
Just to be clear, Jamie, this is what we talk about when we talk about sleep hygiene.
Yes.
These are the kind of things that we talk about. The steps that you might take prior to bed is called the sleep hygiene.
Yeah, exactly. And your sleep hygiene sets you up for the next day of waking as well. Like, they go hand in hand. What you do in the morning and like first half of the day reflects what you do in the evening. They all go hand in hand. It's not one and the other. So yeah, so avoiding daylight, having no coffee and no caffeine after 1 p.m. is a huge one that people ignore all the bloody time. Yes, I saw you drink that earlier, Matt. So I just grasped on Matt. Yeah. We all break it every now and then if we're studying, but we shouldn't. But yeah, ideally no stimulants. No. So if you're taking a pre-workout after 1 p.m. and you decide to train in the evening, just take a pump formula and let your ego go again, or change the time you train.
Jamie, there's a real good tip to users there, because now a lot of pre-workouts have kind of become you don't train without a pre-workout now. It's kind of the gospel. So if you're training, what I train twice a day on most days, and so what I do is I've got two types of pre-workout. I have got a stimulant-based one, which I take on my early workout, and then I've got a pump one that with stimulant-free, which I take later on in the evening.
So neurological would be morning, pump would be evening.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, there you go.
So if you are only training once a day and it's later on in the evening, late afternoon towards the evening, then pick a product that says stimulant free, a pump product. You're going to get the best out of your training, and you're not going to keep you up all night.
Exactly that. And fat burners also, people usually stimulant based, so please remember that. Don't have a grenade before you go to bed, which I've seen people do.
I'm trying the strongest pre-workout. Have you guys ever tried the Warrior Lift Shit pre-workout? It was probably a few years ago. I'm quite sensitive to caffeine as well, but I didn't know this at this point. This was the very start of the journey. And I took this pre-workout. I never felt so wired off an energy drink in my life. I mean, a pre-workout. I had tunnel vision. I was there for 3.5 hours. I was also up till 4:30 in the morning. And then that sleep wasn't even sleep. Like, it was so strong. I look for a pre-workout, right, that doesn't give me that, because I'm quite sensitive to sweeteners. We all know I've got health issues, people. So I won't go down that route. But I'd always go for, this sounds so weird, but where I listen to my music and it actually gets me buzzing, if that makes sense. And that's when I've hit the dose right. And I'd actually know the size of my scoop. Like, if I go heaped, it messes me up. If I go too light, does fuck all. I know the size of the scoop now. But I like the feeling where I shout to myself. I don't care if people hear me. Literally, I genuinely don't care. I'm a weirdo. But at the same time, there's also control, no jitters. Like, if I start jittering, get anxious, like, I've suffered with anxiety in the past. It reminds me of that. It actually turns me off. All I want to feel is that I listen to my music
Like, and if I hear like the Warcraft theme tune, which I do love, by the way, people, that sets me off. Or like the Final Fantasy soundtracks, I'm a massive geek. All that stuff sets me off. But if I listen to something like that and it doesn't set me off, I'm like, fuck, I underdosed the pre-workout. Or if I'm like screaming unnecessarily and being jittery, that actually makes me not want to train, because I'm like, nah, I don't like this. So again, it's a very fine line between this, you know.
I'm old enough to be able to say that I was probably the one of those people to try the first pre-workouts that came out, and I've probably tasted all the ones that what happened back in the day. They weren't regulated, and they aren't regulated properly even nowadays. But
basically drugs.
Yeah, back then they had all kinds of stuff in them, and
horse tranquilizer.
Well, all kinds of class A's in them. Literally, you took one of them and you wanted to go out dancing. But a lot of them have been banned. I can't even remember the names of them, but one of them came in a little tiny tub, and you had like a little tiny scoop. It was like an those. It was like a micro scoop, and you just had one of those, and that honestly destroyed you for hours on end. But that was banned. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it now, but.
While we're on that subject, actually, I think it's quite important to hit the fact that, and this is genuinely that I believe in this, because if you have to train with a pre-workout, you shouldn't be training with a pre-workout. If it's mentally obsessive, then training, that there's something wrong with your mindset towards training. Or if you're like, I have no energy and I have to have a pre-workout, fix your energy. Like, I take a pre-workout because I enjoy the taste of it, because I eat bland, but also because I enjoy what I feel like when I'm training with it. But I could easily train without it if I ran out. But you get these people that genuinely get withdrawals and won't train without one.
But I think so you're talking specifically about the person that is looking for the pre-workout to as an
energy source.
Yeah, just as an energy source to
not as an amplifier. No, not as an amplifier. I mean, it is as a replacement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but no, I mean, what you're talking, not about you, you're talking about the person that takes these because they literally feel like they can't train without it.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about, and it's the ones they need the most strongest one with the highest caffeine kick in. That's what you're talking about. But nowadays, the technology on these pre-workouts is, there's some really, really good ones out there, which are, I've got all kinds of things in there which are increasing blood flow to the muscle, anabolic reactions. There's lots of intelligent stuff going on in these pre-workouts now. So from my perspective, I'm not taking a pre-workout to give me an energy boost. I'm taking it for all the additional benefits of absorption. Yes. All these. The fact that it gives me a little bit of a boost is an additional factor, but it's not the key for me.
Absolutely. As I said, because you enjoy the benefits of it. So it's those extra 1%, right? It's that, yeah. Rather than I have to have this or I can't freaking train. It's like when someone says I can't function without a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Like,
the only time I steer to those super stims is when I'm driving, because I've got sleep apnea, and the only thing that's going to keep me awake is one of those super stims, and I take it literally before getting the car, and I'm driving up to Liverpool, and I'm like,
buzzing.
Let's turn the music on.
Right, we're on the motorway. Let's do some handbrake.
I'm staying awake now. I'm not going to fall asleep. Yay!
Audi R8 just overtook me. Fuck you.
Yeah. We went off a tangent there, but you were talking about the benefits of deep sleep and
sorry, yes. So obviously sleep.
Do you know how much time you should be in REM?
So a sleep cycle is roughly 90 minutes. Sleep Smarter, by the way, people, is the best book in the world for this, because I actually have forgotten half the detailed parts of it. But from my knowledge, so you want to make sure, so sleep cycles are around 90 minutes. If you use apps that you can get unfortunately the Oura Ring doesn't do this. Just the one downside to an Oura Ring, that you can't get live readings. So it stores it and synchronizes to your phone, but it doesn't do a live reading. So if you have like a Polar H10 monitor that you've got on your chest, you can use an app called Sleep Rate, which I believe is free. Now you can set an alarm. This is how awesome this app is. You can set an alarm for say 6 o'clock in the morning. This will judge your sleep cycle and it will wake you up with a gentle tone. So it won't just scare the crap out of you like an alarm does. And it will wake you up bang on when your sleep cycle finishes. It won't interrupt you mid-cycle. So a lot of fatigue actually can come from alarms waking you up mid-cycle. So your body adapts to these cycles as you're going through them. And in a perfect world, you like when you wake up naturally and feel refreshed, that's because you've hit the end of a sleep cycle and woken up and your body's gone, right, it's now time to wake up. Not because a stupid alarm clock screamed in your face. There's a big factor there, right? So you have REM sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, all that factor, right? So REM sleep is rapid eye movement, deep sleep is obviously deep sleep, light sleep is when you're not fully asleep. However, you do need light sleep to transition you. I don't know the exact percentages off the top of my head. I do apologize. I'm not as obviously clued up as I think I am. But realistically, on a good factor, you want your percentage of efficiency above 85%, so your entire sleep efficiency. However, that is also not set in stone. So for example, I have twins. We go to bed at 12 o'clock every night, even sometimes later, depends when they feed the greedy little kids. And I wake up at around 6 to 7. So I never really get optimal sleep. I used to get 9.5 to 10. So I'm very bitter towards it. So with that, I get 90% efficiency. However, my deep sleep's around 35% and my REM's pathetic. It's like 13%. So
you know that REM is considerably lower than what deep sleep should be. They're the where you're actually regenerating your brain cells and
rapid eye,
yeah.
And it's also the latter end of your sleep. So I'm pretty sure REM sleep is at the end of the sleep cycle. So if you're disrupting it, waking in the night, that's usually the one that suffers. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong there, people. Like, I actually feel quite bad. I'm going to go study this now. But I'm pretty sure it's that way around. So basically, most people wake in their sleep, which they shouldn't be. You should be hitting like a cycle of cycles consistently without waking. So it should go in order, but virtually no one does. And by the way, a big factor to that can simply be you've got lights in your room, you haven't got blackout curtains, and you live in a noisy environment, and the temperature of your room is really bad. Yeah. And there's no airflow.
Because I had a shit night's sleep last night. It was too hot.
See, that's one thing, right? So regulating sleep through temperature is massive. It really is. And like I said, like when you wake up to go for a wee, if you turn that light, we're actually discussing this again off air. I'm wearing blue light blocking glasses, people. This is why we're discussing it. But when you turn your light on in the hallway to go to the toilet, you've just told your body it's 12 p.m. and the sun's out. So imagine how much that messes with your body clock just because you've got to go for a wee. It would actually be better for you to literally wee next to your bed. Not saying to do that, but that's what I mean. So this is how sensitive the human body is. We wouldn't sleep. We wouldn't wake in our sleep unless we were like back in the day, but I'm talking like wild time, like loincloth Tarzan time. We wouldn't wake in our sleep unless we were under threat or it was time to wake up. That'd be the only two things. Nothing would wake us otherwise.
So I'm conscious of time and we haven't talked about food yet. So what I'd like to say is just like some quick tips around getting better sleep. One is to try to make sure there is no light in the room. So either buy some kind of
blackout blinds.
Face covering that covers your eyes, so it doesn't matter if there is light in the room.
One thing on that one, your eyes are a receptor, hence glasses. However, so is your skin. So your skin recepts light too. So if there is light on your skin, that can also pick up. Not as sensitive as your eyes, but if you want to be super anal about it should be Batman, Batcave kind of dark. Should be. But yes, eye masks do help. I'm not saying they don't. Please don't think that. I'm just saying that your skin does definitely recept it because there's studies that show that blue light LEDs on your watches can actually prevent melatonin, your sleep hormone, being released from sitting on your skin. So, yeah, sorry to go out on that one. I just wanted to make sure.
That's okay. I mean, obviously, like going the full hog like Jamie, then it's blackout curtains, no alarm lights.
My upstairs has become a porn studio. All the lights are red. I'm not even joking. My wife had a massive
temperature is important as well. So you try to keep the temperature cool and not overheat. What else, Jamie? Is it quick tips for better sleep?
Just the whole caffeine after 1 p.m. Blackout blinds and curtains, ideally. Sleep masks, absolutely. Sorry, sleep eye masks, absolutely. Making sure. Consistency
of having that routine in place.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a very important one, Tyler, is your body gets used to routine. So if you go to bed at different times, then you're absolutely fucking your sleep up. Pardon my French there. So going to bed at the same time or very similar time is a very, very important.
And waking as well. Yeah.
Consistent sleep times, because that's where you get your cycles that Jamie was talking about there. That's how you get consistent, better sleep cycles. by going to bed and waking up at the same or similar times. So that's very important.
Well done, Tyler. Yeah.
Should we move on to food quickly then? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to do it justice because...
Yeah, I was going to say, we might have to leave up for another one because I think we'll rush it and I don't think it'll do it justice.
So should we do that next time then? Apart from, I think we might be able to bring a guest on next week. I just need to speak to her. She's competing this weekend. Sarah will be our guest. So it might be good if she's available next week to bring her on straight after comp prep and talk to her.
Will she be transitioning to an off season as well after that, or is she competing again?
I imagine what she's trying to do is she's going to a UK BFF show this weekend, and that also is a qualifier for the IFBB Pro Arnold's.
Okay, cool.
So it's slightly confusing. It's not the same Arnold's that the two bros have. It's a different one, but she's trying to qualify for that. So. Let me speak to her and see if we can get her on for the next one. And then what we'll do is we'll pick up the food bit, because obviously it's important to eat enough food. But then obviously Jamie would like to talk about...
Why is it always me that goes OTT?
Well, no, I mean, your area of expertise is gut health and things like if you are eating enough food, you are eating enough of the right food, but you're not getting the benefits of that, then it's, what's wrong, what's going wrong. And that's where we can talk about some in-depth issues around things to look out for. So triggers and all these kind of things that you...
Symptoms as well, yeah.
Symptoms, yeah. And some quick fixes as well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we call it a day there? I think that was that was quite useful in the end.
I enjoyed that. That was good.
Yeah.
And Tyler, don't forget to check out your picture on my...
I know I'm going to have a little nosy at this, what picture you've been using.
Yeah, okay.
You kept your curtains closed, Tyler. Jeez.
So...
I was on the toilet.
As always, thanks for listening, guys. We do appreciate you dialing in and listening to us ramble, listen to Jamie ramble.
Matt, we stopped you from rambling on this episode. Matt had a full-on hissy fit prior to this, and it was quite nice to have someone else have one. And we didn't record it, so no.
I'd like to end this on a really shit joke. Last week we were talking about female contraception, and there is actually a new male pill out, and you put it in your shoe and it makes you limp.
Oh.
There's my joke for the day.
Yeah.
It's so funny when I do get jokes. I'm the worst person for not getting onto jokes, and I got that one. So I like it.
There was a little bit of a slow silence, but hopefully the listeners got that one.
Well,
anyway,
if you want a visual truncast of what we look like right now, that I wasn't impressed. Tyler was.
Right, anyway, let's call it a day. Thanks for joining in, guys. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've got any questions, topics you want us to talk about or answer, message any one of us or the Mind Muscle HQ on Instagram. That's all from me.
And me.
And me too.
Synchronise. Speak to you later, guys.
See you, bye.